Hello and welcome to my channel, and welcome to a Sunday morning meetup in which I discuss the Try a Chapter tag, Take 2. You can see my original take of this tag in the info cards above. Mel of Mel's Bookland Adventures originally inspired me to do the tag after I watched her video of the tag. I'll provide the link to her video in the show notes below. The original tag was created by Malia of Book Paradise, and I will also provide the link to her video in the show notes. But before I start the tag, let me tell you about my forthcoming Wednesday interlude, in which I turn the spotlight on the memoirs of Jacques Casanova. This episode contains some fascinating information, so be sure to subscribe and ring the notifications bell to ensure that you don't miss this exciting episode. To do the tag, I ordered some books from my library of books that I had previously saved in my library list of recommendations by other booktubers. This tag is based on two of those recommendations. The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey and The Killer Angels by Michael Shaara. The tag calls for the following. Choose X number of books that you've been meaning to read up to the first chapter, prologue included. Yes or no, will you finish or set it aside? The first book I chose to evaluate is The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey, which was recommended by Simon of SavidgeReads, who said he absolutely loves it. See the link to Simon's review below. I read chapter 1 called Bulrushes, which involves the finding of a dead body in the river, which, when the local priest is called on to investigate, turns out to be missing, presumably having floated away. The body is presumed to be a local man who was seen 3 days previously falling into the river, and the finding of his distinctive shirt seems to confirm it. So far, so good. Now to the actual writing. One of the things that struck me about the writing in this opening chapter was the peculiar metaphors and similes the author employed. For example, his time spent hanging like a lifeless rag off a fallen tree, breathless and with thighs of fire, all plain buttery boyhood. My toes were frogs in a swamp. The shirt went loose and roomy in his hands. The day had a despairing mood. I'd been touched by this optimism, even if it was made of crooked timbers. The clouds were thick old brutes. Then the sun, a bronzy song, dropped dead through age or demoralization. Let me ask you, have you ever heard of anyone dropping dead through demoralization? No, nor have I. I don't know how trees kept enthusiasm for growing in the gentle holiness of the bulrushes. These are just 12 of the expressions used in this short opening chapter, together with a few more acceptable similes and metaphors. The preponderance of these expressions leads me to believe that the author is making a deliberate attempt to be literary, which I abhor. This opening chapter, in spite of the excessive use of metaphor and simile with its attendant literary pretension, is one that has piqued my curiosity as to what happens next, so I will read on. But if the author continues writing in the same pretentious vein, then I'm likely to become disgusted with the writing and to do as shown. So now I've read chapter 2 called Superstition. Almost immediately Harvey introduces an extended simile. He looked at me, he, small and neat, like a field mouse brushed by panicked dash through the wheat and grass, its little heart always pounding in a tiny, courageless chest. I've absolutely no idea what that means. She continues with this method. The pardon between his fingers tremored like a catkin. At this time of year, that light would come at around 2 o'clock, and the wall would wear it diagonally like a silken stole. The smell was warming though, the smell of hops and honey, like the hilt of a summer afternoon. I heard her loose hair brush against her cheek, loud as the broom in the yard. And of course the chapter ends with another simile. Out she went then, slowly and sighing, and the great orb of her pregnant middle filled the lattice window like one of those planets up above rolling heavily past. Please. The whole tone and tenor of Harvey's writing is shot through with these pretentious and preposterous analogies. Even if the story had any merit or interest, the turgid prose that Harvey has chosen to use would turn my stomach like, let me think, how would Harvey phrase it? Like ripe tripe on a white plate, which is equally as preposterous. The second book I evaluate is The Killer Angels by Michael Shaara, which was recommended by Steve Donahue. There is a link to Steve's video below in which I note the time at which he begins the recommendation of this book. The Killer Angels is a reconstruction of the Battle of Gettysburg. I read the foreword, which is useful because it lists the main characters. Then I read chapter 1, called The Spy. Is this book as good as Steve says it is? Is it a surefire hit, as he claims? First, the prose. What did I think of that? The thing that struck me about the prose in this first chapter is that it is seamless, as all good prose should be. Unlike the book mentioned above, it does not draw attention to itself. It is effective and suitable to the task at hand, which is to tell a riveting story and to involve you in the plot. And Michael Shaara certainly knows how to do that. Now that I've read through the whole book, I've had to revise my opinion of Shaara's prose. He writes in short, staccato sentences and often in fragments, 3-word phrases which follow other 3-word phrases. I've noticed that this seems to be an American style of writing, and in fact the whole book would appeal more to an American audience rather than a British one. Now, the story. At the end of chapter 1, you immediately know the lay of the land, the concerns of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee and his second in command, Lieutenant James Longstreet, that it is reported that the Union Army is but 4 hours away from their own scattered army. The doubts as to the trustworthiness of a paid spy's intelligence, and their perplexity why they haven't heard the spy's intelligence, confirmed by Lieutenant General J.E.B. Stuart, whose mission was to keep Lee informed of the Union Army's movements. But in spite of these concerns, Lee decides to turn his army and to head for Gettysburg. The prose is energetic without being quirky, except for the method of sentence construction I have mentioned above. The story is compelling, the actors in the story are clearly delineated, and the dramatic tension is palpable and mounting. Based on this excellent beginning, I want to find out what happens next. And of course, what happens next is the Battle of Gettysburg. Well, not quite. Shaara, in masterly style, slowly but with a sure and steady hand, introduces each of the protagonists, moves them inexorably towards Gettysburg, and plunges us into the action. Shaara's delineation of each character is excellent, so that you come to fully appreciate who they are, what they stand for, and why. And of course there is the foreword, which is useful for checking who each character is as they are introduced into the story. Having said that, I have to admit that I was often at a loss as to who was who in terms of, is this general a Yankee or a Reb? But that is due only to my general ignorance of the American Civil War. I'm sure an American who is familiar with their history would have no problem in placing their characters in the correct army immediately. The one thing that I really appreciated about the way Shaara told his story was the way he put you inside the head of each of the generals, so that you really come to appreciate them as individuals. This is the greatest strength of this book. In my top 10 books tag, which you will find at the end of this video, I laid down the criteria by which I judge novels, otherwise how would I be able to determine the issue unless I had a standard to judge them by? So, is this a top 10 book, and would I want to read it again? I'm glad that I read it once, but that once has satisfied my curiosities, and so let us leave it there. This tag has been around since November 2015, so if you have a channel and you haven't tried it yet, consider yourself tagged. Yes, I mean you. So that's all, folks, and remember to comment, subscribe, like and share, and I'll be back soon with another BookTube video.